Alright, welcome. My name is Charlie, and this will be the first of a series of tutorials meant to teach you the various concepts of quantized field theory, which is an ongoing project of mine, the roots of which come from 9-square theory. In short, quantized field theory, or just QFT, is a comprehensive system for notating, designing, organizing, and philosophizing prop spinning. In other words, you can use it to write down or communicate patterns, you can use it to come up with new patterns, you can use it to create logical families of patterns, and you can use it to change the way you think about patterns. So QFT seems to have many uses, both practical and theoretical. So far I've worked out dozens of capabilities, and the system as a whole seems amazingly compact and versatile. Currently, I have methods in place that allow you to consider spinning in 2D or 3D with any number of props from 1 to infinity, so things like tunneling and partner poi are covered. It'll also simulate gravitational effects on poi. It's designed around the proportions of your individual body, so it works for everyone regardless of their size. You can also change how coarse or fine the quantization is to match your needs. You can easily change the paradigm that you're considering from tiny segments of patterns up to an individual pattern and all the way up to entire families of patterns. The notation system can incorporate rhythmic elements and read like sheet music for choreographic purposes. It's modular, so you can include things that the notation system and QFT don't usually look at, like contact poi, tangles, tosses, and negative space. It also does a nice job of tracking the hand as it moves, so you can consider whether a particular pattern is physiologically possible. By making use of its computational abilities, it can also be used as easily to find patterns that no one's ever seen before. And finally, it can also be used just as effectively with clubs, staves, and theoretically hoops, boogang, and fans. Pretty much any semi-rigid or rigid prop, including your body. Your arms, hands, fingers, head, torso, and legs can all be included in the notation for things like martial arts forms or highly specific dance choreography. Throughout these tutorials, we'll be talking a lot about patterns because QFT is most effective for describing and analyzing pattern spinning. This is a term I use to describe the field of tech poi, which is mostly concerned with the geometric shapes and mechanical interactions made by your hands, the poi chains, and the poi head. Pattern spinning is less concerned with the fields of tech involving contact poi, inversions, what you do with your body, or how the poi interacts with your body. Again, the capability does seem to exist in QFT to consider these things, but my focus hasn't really been on these things yet. Since I've been dealing with pattern spinning up till this point, much of QFT remains theoretical. I'd like to consider the system in revision 1.0 at this point. It is a language. Keep in mind that this means that it'll definitely change over time as people discover and add new things, or as we discard inadequate elements of the system in favor of better ones. My plan is to periodically update these changes into new revisions as they develop. It would be nice if everyone is using the same revision so we can communicate with each other most effectively. There will be a Facebook group. It'll be the QFT notation group, so ask to join that if you're interested. And I'll be periodically posting new tutorials on my YouTube channel, so just check back here occasionally as well. Likewise, if you have criticism or ideas to share, or if you need help with anything in these lessons, if you have questions, probably the best place to go would be the Facebook group. I'm sure there will be discussions over there. Alright, so welcome to Lesson 1. In this lesson, we'll talk about quantization and the recursive building blocks which make up the core philosophy of QFT. This philosophy is going to shape the way we use the more advanced capabilities that are covered further in the lessons. Alright, so according to Wikipedia, quantization is the procedure of constraining something from a continuous or infinite set of values to a discrete set. I'm sure all of you are probably pretty used to breaking down the spins that you see other people do, either in real life or on YouTube. We do this all the time, and it's probably how most of us learned how to spin. If you see someone perform a spin you like and you want to learn it, then you break it up into the recognizable patterns they used, say a weave, then transitioned into an anti-spin flower, and then a buzzsaw, and so on. You practiced each of these parts individually, and eventually you can reconstruct the entire spin or some of the parts that you liked the most. This is quantization in action. The key here is that you took a stream of unbroken movement and chopped it up into a set of discrete concepts to help you understand it. It's also possible to go the other way once you have this collection of discrete concepts. You can choreograph or improvise your own spin simply by taking the patterns from your mental catalog and stringing them together into a unique and unbroken sequence. The idea behind quantized field theory is essentially the same, but applies this concept on many levels. Similar to how we quantize the connections between patterns in a spin, we can also apply this same concept to break the individual patterns down into smaller segments. And just like how we have a mental catalog of patterns with which to choreograph or improvise new and interesting spins, we can also develop a similar cache of segments with which to construct new and interesting patterns. In fact, QFT hardly makes any distinction between these things: the segments, the patterns, patterns of patterns, or even patterns of patterns of patterns. The overarching philosophy of quantized field theory is that quantization can be used extensively to understand the relationships between patterns. These relationships can be turned into building blocks which exist in groups on different levels or layers. Your ultimate goal is to understand how the building blocks in each layer connect to each other and how each layer connects to each other layer. QFT encompasses a process which is designed to help you visualize and understand these connections, which helps you develop your skills logically and with balance. Through this process, you'll develop powerful tools that'll expand your mind and skill set toward technical mastery of your prop. What we do is consider little pieces of patterns as building blocks. We put related groups of these blocks together in ways that make a single larger object that we call a framework. QFT is recursive, which means that when you use building blocks to make a framework, you can consider them together as one thing. The framework itself is a larger building block, and then you can take several other frameworks, again each a logically connected list of smaller units, and you put them all together to make an even bigger framework. So what you end up with is sort of like frameworks inside frameworks inside frameworks. And as you follow through with this recursion, learning each framework along the way, you move closer and closer to the mastery of a meaningful, structured, and personalized version of the infinite universe of your prop. The idea behind a framework is that you're comfortable with it. It's roughly equivalent to the musical idea of scales and arpeggios. Basically, by organizing patterns and composite patterns into groups that connect to each other with logical consistency, we can build an imaginary sandbox to play in, the boundaries of which are very familiar to us. This means that during improvisation, our chances of getting stuck are very low, and at each fork in the road, we have the ability to exercise willful intent, deciding which way to go, instead of spinning habitually. If we learn several frameworks, then we have several sandboxes to play in, but we need to develop a familiar path to follow from one to the next, else we might get lost between the two. So we learn the boundaries of the playground, which represents a larger framework, and that contains all the smaller frameworks. Then we wander outside our playground. We find a whole new world of places for us to explore, each with different distinguishing characteristics. We might go to the pool or the library, for example. But no matter how far we search, there's always more to explore. In addition to the direct benefits that this potentially has for performances, I also believe that this potential balance of structure, control, and freedom can be a great tool for some of the more meditative aspects of spinning. As the spinner meditates on each decision to transition from one pattern to the next, their intense application of focus and willful intent can serve to encourage flow state experiences. To apply this philosophy in the prop spinning world, starting at the lowest level, you assemble a list of first-layer building blocks. They all have to share a direct or indirect connection with each other, which is defined through a special process that's very similar to the concept of timing and direction. These first-layer building blocks are the quantized segments that can be used to construct a pattern such as a weave. Once we've built something like a weave, we can consider that pattern itself as another type of building block, one layer higher than the first. With the first layer building blocks, we could build a pattern, and in the same way, we can use the resulting pattern as a second layer building block for constructing something larger. At this next level, you assemble a list of patterns, or second layer building blocks, that again all share a direct or indirect connection with each other through the same rough idea of timing and direction. For example, we can assemble weaves, buzzsaws, and windmills into a fountain because they share linkable qualities like timing and direction. The fountain itself can then be used as a larger third-layer building block along with other third-layer building blocks that all share a direct or indirect connection with each other. For example, because of their interconnected timing and direction qualities, as well as positioning, we could assemble fountains, Mercedes, full-arm extensions, four-petal anti-spin flowers, and so on into 9-square theory, with 9-square theory representing a larger still fourth-layer building block. You can do this forever, and each time you do, assuming you practice and master each component, you come a step closer to a semblance of the technical mastery of your prop. If it isn't obvious already, probably one of the coolest things about this is that it unifies all of the theories and frameworks we've been working on over the years. 9-square theory, unit circle theory, sticky circles, 3D plane shifting, hard, soft, and mixed transitions, transition theory, all of them can be defined in QFT with building blocks in one layer or another throughout the hierarchy. So in the upcoming lessons, we're going to focus mainly on QFT notation. Most of you will probably have more use for that than the computational and analytical techniques that I'll go over later on. Try to keep this philosophy and its application in mind, though, as we progress through the lessons. Remember that QFT makes little distinction between the layers and that the notation system is designed to keep any potential relationship between two patterns as available to you as possible. I'll explain the important parts of QFT as needed while we go through the notation system, and by the end you should be able to communicate patterns and sequences effectively. Understanding QFT notation will make it much easier to play with some of the more advanced theoretical concepts associated with the rest of the theory. So after we go through the notation system, we'll move on to the heavier theoretical stuff using the notation system as a backbone.